It's, what's today? November 18th, I believe. I think this is probably our 20th event of the year, which is breaking records each time. We're thrilled to be able to continue to do these events. Glad that the webinar format is working. We've been doing webinars essentially since Pesach is over. And we're getting a great number of people coming, listening to a lot of great topics. We've been switching off on Wednesdays, mostly between financial topics and technology topics. Next year, as we're planning next year, we are starting to work on newer ideas, marketing, real estate, and love people's feedback about what kind of topics they would find interesting. We may do them a little bit less frequently. Every Wednesday is a bit exhausting to assemble and put together. So we'll be maybe doing them every couple of weeks instead of every single week. But again, we'd love to have people participating, listening, learning. If you have topics in mind, please reach out, and we may try to tinker with the format a little bit. So today's topic we're really excited about. It's a topic that is obviously an important topic in any environment, certainly in a COVID world. It's become even, I would say, more important and relevant as people have moved things to off-premise to in the cloud. People are buying things more online than in stores. And it's the macro theme of digitization. Dr. Charles Popper is going to walk us through some of those nuanced differences, some of the things that we've all observed and noticed, whether we stopped writing checks and sending our checks online, or how we consume media from print newspaper to other. And Dr. Charles Popper is the founder and CEO of the TechPar Group. And the TechPar Group is a technology advisory firm really helping develop strategies for many companies in terms of how do they go ahead and think about their digital journey. I've been fortunate to know him for a couple of years now. I think we met maybe through one of these events, met through a friend, Yitz Twersky, who introduced me to him a couple of years ago also. So really thrilled to go ahead and have him here and help us understand, all of us understand, some of the nuanced differences in how companies think about their strategy. You'll see his most impressive background on the link that you should have all received as part of the invitation, with a BA and PhD degrees from Harvard in applied math and comp sci. And really a very impressive background. And he's going to be joined by Daniel Cohn-Dumani, who also has a most impressive background. And Daniel is the partner and market leader for digital technology transformation at Witham. And Daniel's orientation in the conversation is going to be perhaps more tactically oriented as opposed to strategy oriented. And we thought these two aspects would be great for a wide range of people to hear about, whether they think about it for their own firms. And I'm sure we're going to hear about a lot of relevancies to different sectors, perhaps financial services, real estate, retail. We're going to, I'm sure, hear about a lot of relevant applications. We very much encourage people to ask questions. Use the chat bot that you'll see down here. I think we've all been through this format a couple of times now. We have found that keeping people muted has been easier for us to go ahead and hear the discussion. But we'll be fielding the chat questions, so you'll see them at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I think we've teed up hopefully over 20 people already in the participant queue. Let me hand it over to Dr. Charles Popper, who will go through his presentation about how this world is changing, and very much looking forward to hearing the remarks. I hand it to you.
Great. Thank you, Lawrence. What we'll do today is talk a little bit first about what is digital transformation. The word digital may be one of the most overused words in the dictionary these days. So let's try to define terms and really focus on what we mean by transformation, and then talk about the business potential from a strategic point of view. That'll be my remarks. And then I'll hand off to Daniel, who'll talk about the technology trends and get more specific at how you really get things done with the technologies. And that's, I think, both parts should be of great value, but love to get your questions and have discussion flowing after this. So let's go on to define digital transformation. And the next slide will give some terms that we use. This work, I should say, it was done, a lot of it was research that I did and led at the Conference Board as a senior fellow in their Institute for Innovation and Digital Transformation. And a lot of it is work that we've done at TechPar Group with our clients as we've helped them with digital transformation strategies. So three terms, and it's the words are not relevant or not as important as the ideas behind it. Digitization is when you change a product from a physical format to a digital format. An example, in the print industry, think about a book. You can publish a book in hard copy and print, and you sell it in bookstores, or you can turn it online. You can read it through your Kindle or through a web browser. So that's a digitization. You've digitized your product, but it's the same book, the same words, same pictures. It's simply in an electronic digital format. Digitalization is when you change the way you produce the book. So instead of typing on a typewriter and going to a typesetting machine, et cetera, and eventually printing the paper, you can use electronic editing. So there are a whole bunch of tools that have been developed over the last number of years that allow much more facile use of digital technologies to produce the book. But at the end of the day, if you digitalized your production process, you're still printing a physical book. And if you put these two together, you can now produce the book electronically and make it available electronically. So it's an electronic product as well as an electronic internal process. Digital transformation takes it a step further and adds a lot more value to that. And again, take the book analogy. Think about a textbook. The digital transformation would say that the end goal really is not the textbook. What it is a vehicle to help teachers and students communicate and learn. That goes beyond simply a fixed book with well-defined chapters it's written and last for years. It may be more dynamic. It may include some interchange between the professor, or the teacher, and the student. And that's digital transformation. You've really changed your business model. You changed the way that you think about what you're offering to the consumer. So, and that's where we want to focus, so the full digital transformation. And why is that important? So on the next slide, we talk about the productivity paradox. And the issue here is over many years, we've seen a lot of investment in digital technologies. And then starting about the year 2005, we saw the productivity stop growing and not that the productivity itself diminished, but the growth in productivity stopped, and productivity is kind of flat for 5 to 10 years. And the question was, why is that? Why is the investment in digital technologies not creating the productivity and business value that we expected? And as that led to the research that we did at the Conference Board, and others have been researching this as well. And what we wanted to understand is, what do you need to do as you put in digital technologies in order to create the transformation that leads to business value? So the report that we published, and it's on the Conference Board website, it's available through the TechPar Group website as well. It's realizing the full potential of digital transformation. And we did a multi-client study. We interviewed 14 leading companies to understand how they did things, what worked, what didn't work. And we produced that report. And you'll see in the next few slides is a very high-level summary of the findings. So the first major finding was that when you think about digital transformation and the strategy for your transformation, you need to integrate that within your overall business strategy. That you really need to start with a business strategy. I want to become more customer focused. I want to expand my customer base to new categories. I want to change how I'm doing business. But it's not a technology driven strategy to start with. I have business goals and objectives I want to get to. Now, of course, many of those goals are driven by the technology. You can only get to those goals by technology. And sometimes you define new goals because you know what the technology can offer. So understanding digital technologies and digital opportunities is key to the strategy, but you're doing it because there's a business purpose, not just because you want to go digital. Companies that are going digital just because everybody else is going digital tend not to get the value from that investment. And even companies that make very bold bets on digital transformation and digital initiatives don't always work if in fact that's not core to their overall business strategy. So let's go to an example. On the next slide, we'll go to the digital to banking. And this is work that TechPart Group has now done with some clients. The banking industry is changing. We all know that. There's been a lot of work done in the fintech world. I think there have been a number of these YU webcasts that are focused on some of these. And what the slide tries to show is that there are a lot of startups in the industry that are either redefining banking as Chime as an all digital bank, or technologies that are niche technologies within banking. But what they tend to do is challenge banking, traditional banking. And off to the right, you see traditional banks with platforms, the software platforms that drive the bank. These are very old systems, many of them still running on mainframes, and in traditional data centers. And banks are moving to try to put that in the cloud. But the key is just taking your old technology and making new technology out of it doesn't necessarily change the way you do business. If your banking strategy is, we want to be customer centric and delight our customers, give them an experience that they're comfortable with, that the millennial generation feels that when they're on their smartphones and doing banking, their banking experience is as comfortable as their Netflix experience or their Amazon experience. It's that customer experience that is the business strategy, and that's driven by and integrated with the digital strategy. So once you have that as your business strategy, you can then understand what the digital technologies need to be to enable that and deliver on that business strategy. So that would be an example of why and how you want to integrate the digital strategy with the business strategy and make sure that in fact, you're getting the business results that you're looking for. The one example that we found in the study of a company that went digital for the sake of going digital was a tech company, one of the technology vendors that was an older vendor and felt that it was not viewed as digitally relevant. So they went digital just to prove to their customer base that they in fact were digital and were relevant, and they succeeded at that. But there, the digital strategy and the business strategy weren't in the same. It was to show their digital prowess and digital relevance. And again, that was really proved our point that these strategies have to be integrated. So that was the first major finding. The next finding was that the value that you get from your digital transformation really comes primarily from thinking about the new business model and creating new business models. And what this slide tries to show is that you start with the strategy off to the left. You have to proactively think through your business model. What is the value proposition? What are you bringing to market? Is a product or a service? How do you create that value? How do you actually capture that value financially? How do you make sure that you're actually monetizing what that is? And what is the network? Whom do you need to cooperate with in the ecosystem to make this work? Because one of the distinctions between the old world and the new world is that there are a few islands that are self-sustaining, that most businesses that succeed with digital technologies and digital approaches have business partners and relate to those partners to their customers in new and different ways. So that's the value network. And then off to the right, there are the tactics. Now that's where you start changing your operating model, some of the internal procedures, your digitalization as we defined earlier, and that's there to support the strategy. So again, what are examples of new business models? In the study, we saw a company that makes filters for HVAC systems. You have a home furnace, a home heating system, you've got to put in filters every now and then, once a month, whatever they recommend. And it's up to you to put in the filters, and you go and buy the filters, and the company was selling filters. One of the things they realized in their R&D group was that they could put sensors on the filter, and the sensor could then tell them when the filter was getting clogged and becoming less effective. And those sensors could be combined with a communication capability, and they could put these filters out in the field, and then over Wi-Fi and your cell networks, they could report back. And basically, it's like ET call home. The filter calls up and says, I'm running out of gas here. You know, I'm getting clogged up. I need some help. And the company will send out a new filter when you need it. So the idea is that instead of selling filters, you're selling a clean air service. And it's a subscription service. You pay X dollars a month, and you're guaranteed that you get filters when you need them. And that was the new business model. Substantial change that required the company to change itself. Another example is in real estate. And in the real estate world, as we know, COVID has made a huge impact on real estate. Office space is in a critical stage now. Companies are in the Manhattan area for sure, all big cities. Office buildings are mostly empty. People are either told not to come to work, or the workforce is dramatically reduced. And the landlords and building owners are facing a crisis. So one of the things you can think about it as companies redefine the way that they map their workforce to the workplace, and understand that the big office model of 1 million square feet in one building in Manhattan may be a relic, and that in the future, employees really want to be able to work remotely when they can, avoid the commute, avoid the risks in the COVID world of taking a mass transit from home to work. But beyond that, it's a lifestyle issue, and the talent recruitment requires companies to give employees more choice. So what companies are looking at is a flexible model in some central city space, but much more suburban satellite space. So employees have a place to go. They're not forced to work at home. Not everybody can comfortably work at home. If you're in an apartment with some kids and the kids are not home, or at home and not in school, it can be really tough to work at home. And people want the socialization. They want to get into the office and see peers, but there are limits to that. So the notion that a company can redefine its office strategy and say, okay, I may need 1 million square feet, or maybe I only need 500,000 square feet, because half the time people are going to work at home. But those 500,000 square feet shouldn't all be in central city. They should be scattered around. So what I'd really like to do is lease this kind of flexible space. And the analogy here is just like cloud computing. When I get computing power from the cloud, I'm on the fly dynamically using as much power or as little compute power as I need, as much or as little storage as I need. And the cloud services, Amazon and Microsoft Azure and the others, will all provide space on demand. The same can be true in the real estate model. It may not be a moment to moment, it might be month to month or year to year, but instead of signing a 10-year lease and designating where I want the space, I may say, I'll sign a 10-year lease for 500,000 square feet, but I want year by year the flexibility of getting the space in different locations as I match where my employees need to be. So that's now a different kind of business model. And one of our premises is that whether it's the landlords or some intermediate group, they will start thinking about how do we offer leasing services with this kind of flexibility. Again, changing the business model, powered by the technology that allows people to link their offices in really robust ways, and make it feasible for people to work remotely and in a hybrid, in office, in multiple offices and satellites. So that's technology driven. There's technology that helps the office space itself be reconfigurable. So all that is technology driven, but it's a different kind of offering to the marketplace, a different business model. So that's another example. The third finding that we have on the next slide is that as you measure your digital transformation progress, you really need to do this in a multifaceted way. First of all, you need to think in terms of inputs, throughputs, and outputs. The outputs are the obvious ones, and they don't really change a lot. Business outputs in terms of measuring your success will always come down to revenue, to profit, to margin, to market share. Those are pretty well defined, and whether you're physical or digital, those are still the relevant measures in terms of your business success. But the inputs are also pretty much the same. It's your resources that you're using, people resources, human resources, physical resources, raw materials. But the throughputs are what's interesting. It's how do you measure your progress along the way to turn inputs into outputs? And the key here is to think in terms of measuring in terms of leading indicators and not lagging indicators. So with a high-tech company that was part of our study, they actually have instrumented their products so that they can tell as they make a change to a product whether or not this is working with their customers. So the idea is that if you've got 1 million customers on an online product, you can put in a change using what the laboratory would call an A/B switch. Or in modern terms, a clinical trial with a vaccine and the placebo. That some of the customers will get the new version of your website or your new service, and some retain the old one. They're the placebo group, and you can tell day to day if you've instrumented your product, literally overnight, what the customer engagement is. Have customers gotten more excited about your product or less excited? You know, are they engaging with you? And customer engagement is absolutely a leading indicator to future sales. If your customers are engaged, they will renew their subscription, they'll buy more, they'll expand, they'll go on to premium services, and you're on the right track. If customer engagement is not high, you're going to lose them. So it's the leading indicator. And if you've instrumented your services, you can really find out quickly if the changes you're making in a controlled sort of on real-time experimental way, if they're working or not, and that can lead you in the right direction. So this is the digital impact of measuring success and understanding if you're on the right track or not. And that's really critical. Another example that's important on the next slide is as you've redefined your business model, and you now think in terms of the four elements we talked about before of what's the value proposition, how do you create value and monetize the value and value capture, and then deal with your network. Are you measuring the way each of those components perform in a consistent way? So an obvious example is the air filter case I talked about before. In the previous world, that company measured success of the manufacturing group in terms of volume. How many filters did I produce? And profit and loss kind of went to the manufacturing group, to the sales group, based on sales. In the subscription model, you actually don't want to sell as much. You'd rather have lower volume as long as the customers are paying for their subscription, and you're optimizing the use of the filters because they're out in the field as long as they need to be, but no longer. And your profit and loss accrues to different parts of the company in different forms. So that if you want to really incent all of the parts of the organization to behave properly and to cooperate, you incent them by measuring the profit and loss according to the new business model, not the old business model. If you need to work with partners in this, and your distributors are changing now because of the new business model, you want to measure the distributors in your value network according to the new model. So the cohesiveness index is a way, and we've done research to kind of flesh this out. How do you make sure that your measurements in all these areas are consistent so you can make sure that in fact the progress you're making is working and that you're moving in the right direction? So this is really just the headlines of the study. It's getting the strategy right at a business level, making sure the digital strategy integrates with that, and that secondly, to make sure that the business model innovation that you need, that you've thought creatively and coherently about what new business model makes sense for you and how do you go to market with it, and then how do you measure all that and make sure that you're on the right track and try to find measures and metrics that are leading indicators so that you find out before too late when you're making the right turn or the wrong turn, and you can course correct as you go. So those are the key learnings. There's a lot more behind it in the study we did at the research at the conference board. You can see that in the report online. If you need it, we'll get you a link to that afterwards. And as I said, at Tech Park Group, we've been taking this to the next step in industries, retail banking, real estate, healthcare, and others where we think very strategically in terms of each business, where it's going, what it needs to do, and how it can get the full potential of its digital transformation. So that's the theory. And now to actually make it really practical, let me hand it over to Daniel, who'll talk about the real world and what they're seeing from the Witham point of view.
Great, thank you, Charles. And as we witness in through Charles' presentation, we all can say that technology is playing an increasing role in everything we and our customer do, shaping the growth, disrupting industries, landscape, providing a true catalyst for transformation. And in terms of impact, you know, digital transformation truly can be considered the next industrial revolution. And as a matter of fact, many people say it started about 4 or 5 years ago, providing this catalyst for new business models, products, services, things we've never imagined before, and experience that impact not only business, but our society overall. And if you're not sure about that, I have 4 kids, I have a busy household, and I can just look at my kids, right? And you can see how that blur and divide between physical and digital is now collapsing, right? For the younger generation, they are used to a fully digital, physical world, fully integrated. And think about COVID. The technology have allowed many businesses to keep going and even accelerate throughout the event in 2020. Now, in 2020, something happened, obviously. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but prior to that, digital transformation was a force of its own. For the last 5 years, we've seen acceleration. And, when you think about that, what happened in 2020 is just an accelerator. For many of our clients, we've seen years of digital transformation happen in a matter of months, right? Some business were forced to transform themselves. They didn't have a choice, right? It was survival. And what we've seen happen in the last 7 months is many businesses no longer view digital transformation solely as a source of innovation, something they have to do to innovate in the future, but is truly becoming a requirement for business continuity, enabling teams to work from anywhere, organization to rapidly adjust in the face of crisis. And wherever many businesses were used to move forward slowly, cautiously with digital transformation, today companies are relying on digital transformation for stability, for agility. And I think Charles talks about the change in commercial real estate is going to be staggering moving forward, where technology is going to enable a new business model on how we work, hopefully reducing commute time for a lot of people and enabling new scenarios. So when we go more tactically and think about the priorities, right? And this was a survey that was done last year. You can think about traditional web technology and cloud-based services are very mature, right? Many of the folks that were interviewed said they've already thinking about this. I mean, obviously traditional web technology has been around for a while and cloud-based service as well. But for many business, and you'll be surprised to hear that many organizations were not fully transitioned to the cloud and got this accelerated. I think the ability to provide mobile technology and ability to perform on any device from any time was a priority and continue to increase. Big data and big analytics is still top of mind with probably half of most organizations. The Internet of Things, which is what Charles talks about in the example of a sensor on a filter, is a great example of how having connected devices, sensor everywhere can provide transformation into business model. Think about another construction company that has sensor on their device, on their equipment, so they can detect when an equipment would fail ahead of time. Many company operating elevators have used IoT for many years, right? Where they can now predict when something will fail, right? I know I don't live in New York City, but in the city you have a lot of elevators. You don't want failure, but many of those companies are now able to predict, and months in advance, this elevator is about to fail. Let's go and service it ahead of time. And I think when you think about IoT and big data, it goes hand in hand, right? Those sensors are producing vast amount of data, right? That needs to be managed, and we're now able to handle, massive amount of data like we've never been before. AI is obviously top of mind for everyone. I think, it's still a very, blurry concept for many organizations, but many organizations don't know that they're using AI today. If you guys use PowerPoint, like I do, and we built this presentation in PowerPoint, many of those slides and the design on the slides you're seeing are actually powered by artificial intelligence. Microsoft Office PowerPoint has a way to, propose and give you design ideas. So that's AI, very tactical, that is behind the scene that we don't see. Robotics, process automation, this is going to grow tremendously over the next over the next year or two and beyond as well. I think augmented reality is coming as well, and other technology are way here important. So I'm going to drill down next into some key trends, and think about COVID, right? And one of the most interesting aspects for many companies was COVID became an accelerator, not an obstacle. And whether they were launching digital transformation, new workforce models, or updating their customer interaction technology, many companies use the crisis to make things better, to get a safer and better normal. And that's interesting, right? Because many organizations were prepared for COVID because they've started the digital transformation initiative early on, and COVID became that accelerator where many companies will come out of this stronger than ever, and able to perform at a very high standard. Cloud is more prevalent than ever. I'm still shocked every day when I meet with prospective clients and seeing that some organizations still have not been able to make that move. If we weren't convinced that cloud is secure, effective, productive, cost efficient, I think COVID taught us that, hey, it's moving quickly. With that came, the need for cybersecurity is now becoming more complex. I'll expand on that. AI and machine learning is powering some organization through the pandemic. If you think about the advance we had in vaccine, hopefully soon, I think AI and machine learning has been tremendous technology that have helped us, will help us go through this pandemic faster than 100 years ago, of course. We'll continue to see tremendous growth in automation. And I think new business model with augmented reality, if you have people working from home for the long run, giving them, and I'll give you some real example of that, tools where they can feel more connected, more engaged with the organization while working from home is obviously becoming, is increasing as we speak. From a cloud standpoint, we used to have conversation about, is the cloud secure? I think people are beyond that. The cloud is more secure than ever. There's been an increase in demand for software as a service and other cloud-based mobile service to support that mode, right? We call it the remote everything. We are in a world that will continue to see a lot of things happening remotely wherever you are. And of course, the pandemic has accelerated an age where, people expect it. Again, take that younger generation, my kids, in their 20s or teenagers, where they come to the workforce with tremendous amount of expectation, where they can work whenever they want, from wherever they want. And, it's been interesting. You guys are probably on Zooms or Teams or WebEx meeting all day long. And, sometimes you're talking with people that are, 3,000 miles away from where they used to be, right? They decided to just get away and move somewhere, and they can continue to work and do what they're used to. So, this remote everything has been accelerated. I think obviously COVID has brought up, has not stopped data breaches. As a matter of fact, they've accelerated to a factor of 50 to 75%. If you haven't gotten a COVID phishing email, it's coming. And, we have to watch that, obviously. But, business are moving to something now called zero trust architecture, right? Where, the world of technology was open. Hey, we have a system, an administrator, we're going to trust that person because he or she is trained. It's moving to a state of, we don't trust anyone. Even in your organization, you're not trusted unless you went and access, privilege things on demand, right? Technology is now helped to support that. And I continue to say that security has to stay priority number one, right? Cloud gives you this continuity, but you need to think about security as a top priority, especially over the next 12 to 18 months as we continue to navigate an age of uncertainty that's difficult to deal with. You know, AI and machine learning, a lot of people ask, why now? Why is artificial intelligence and machine learning happening now? I have to remind my early years in school. I studied computer science in the late 80s. That tells you how old I am. And back then, I studied artificial intelligence, right? And the concept I've learned in the late 80s and early 90s are the exact same concept that comes to fruition and true application today. And the reason why, there's three factors why AI and machine learning are so prevalent today. Number one is the availability of massive amount of computing power. If you need a computer now, you go to the Microsoft Azure Cloud or AWS, you can rent a cluster of 1 million computers for an hour at a fraction of the cost and have massive amount of power. And when you're done, you shut it down and you only pay for that hour that you used it. So massive amount of computing power, ability to store and process huge amount of data. AI machine learning only works when you're able to learn from existing data set. And again, I've talked about advances in vaccine. They were truly powerful AI and machine learning and the ability to sequence genome very quickly and to simulate the effect of a vaccine. You guys, I'm not a chemical or biologist, but the vaccine that are coming are unique. Both those two vaccines are proteins that simulate the reaction of a vaccine. You're not going to be inoculated with a COVID virus just by a protein that simulate that vaccine. And again, AI and machine learning has given this ability. And that continuous data growth is that. I think we've seen a growth in more practical AI around what we call conversational AI. To answer questions, right? If you think about a customer service organization that overnight has to move thousands of agents home, and it's harder to manage. You've seen a lot of things that are powered by artificial intelligence to help, conversational artificial intelligence, having chatbots or virtual agents come here to help. So that's seen that we've seen growth and demand in that space prior to COVID and now accelerated with COVID. If you're a business that, as Charles mentioned, I love his introduction about, what digitalization is or being digital is. I'm still staggered to see businesses that still process paper. I met with a prospective client a few weeks ago telling me that they're still shipping boxes of invoice from one office to the other, and they have to have people going in the office to process those, because guess what? They didn't think about that. And automation is here, was here prior to COVID, and will continue to grow to automate tasks and deal with this disruption of work. You can handle paper when everyone is home and not able to go to an office. The field of robotic process automation, I'll talk more about that. And you see lots of tasks being replaced by robots in the world of RPA. Investment in AI and VR prove useful. If you guys are fans or sports fan, you probably have seen this virtual fan experience in the NFL, in the NBA, where you can see fans in the stands, and they're actually not fans. They're people on video cameras superimposed in a feed, so you think that there's people in the stand. That's a virtual fan experience. Very cool application of AI. Of course, we're all in Zoom and virtual meetings, and we've seen an advance in virtual medicine, right? Who would have thought 2 years ago that we'll be able to have a checkup with our doctor virtually? Well, we didn't have a choice this year, and I suspect this will continue as a trend. And I like to call it the virtual everything, right? Because we're in that world where everything is becoming virtual, and that blurring of physical and digital divide is accelerating. That's an example of a virtual experience. This is one of Microsoft research project called the Together mode, where you see soon are now able to view yourself sitting somewhere, either in an auditorium or around a conference table as you're attending a meeting. So that's to combat the Zoom fatigue or the virtual meeting fatigue. So lots of companies have experiencing or experimenting with ideas like that. This is another example of data discovery through augmented reality or virtual reality, where you're able to view it. And if you think doing that with a mask, right, or with a headset, you're now able to navigate for data in ways that you never could do before, right? Where you can truly navigate and discover data in ways that fits and fit everyone's need. And that's just an Excel spreadsheet that's presented in graphical manner through virtual reality. You know what COVID has also taught us is, you know, we need to be able to build application quick and fast. And, you know, if you're in certain state that mandate to track, you know, COVID case in your organization, to test your employee and have them check in with you on a monthly basis, well, you know, you cannot build apps in a day or two. You know, we have templates now. We've deployed this, what we call the back to work solution with many of our clients, where employee can check in every day and say, I'm feeling well, I'm not feeling good. You can check who has checked in, who has not checked in, and you can see on a map where the cases are for your company, right? Where you can have those kind of things happening. So, you know, this digital transformation trend is also pushing application development to be able to deliver application in a matter of days, not weeks, certainly not months, definitely not years, because things are moving so quickly that you can build an app that's going to last you 10 years. You need an app for now, for the next 6 months, and then you'll move on to the next thing later on. So acceleration are moving. So practically, with all those trends in mind, cloud, AI, machine learning, VR, AR, and all those things, and with a midst of security, you know, business have to reinvent how business gets done, right? How do you work internally? And there'll be pressure to do that moving forward. So, you know, when I think about reinventing how work gets done, I like to think about the outcome of digital transformation, right? I think Charles did a great job talking about the strategy behind it. But what are the outcomes? And there's really 4 dimensions in outcomes. And outcome is what you can measure. For some organization, engaging your clients or your customers and providing new way of engaging those clients is an outcome that you want to reach. For many organizations, it's about empowering your employees to be more productive, to fight that productivity decline that we saw earlier, and empowering your employees to be more productive and drive back to efficiency and productivity. For every business, you have to optimize your operations. And lastly, the more transformative aspect of digital transformation is truly reinventing your product or your services if you're a service organization. So just give you a few ideas here of reinventing employee empowerment. You know, for many business, it's not too late to move what you still have on premises into the cloud, right? Not too late to do it. We, as you will imagine, been busy as ever doing cloud migration for many and countless of businesses. And for those that were caught off guard, right? Short, you know, post COVID, you know, I had prospect that came out to me and said, you know, I wish I would have listened to you a year ago when you told me move to the cloud now, right? And now they had to do it in a hurry, which obviously cost a lot more money and is a lot more painful because you have to train people now working from home. You know, keep as a business and ensure people can be effective, right? You know, I've talked about this meeting fatigue. I know for myself, I spend 90% of my day on video calls. It's exhausting. And I think we all have to think about this. And if you think about what what company like Microsoft has done, Microsoft is releasing now feature of the Office 365 platform focused on the well-being of the employees, what really to empower people to be more effective, using AI, machine learning to suggest employee what they should do next, right? That seems a little big broadery, but it's very powerful, right? How many of you have been in these cases where, you're bombarded with email all day long, you forgot to respond to someone, and what if Outlook will tell you, at the end of the day, there were 6 emails that you should have responded that you forgot, right? So, you'll see more and more of those end user productivity tools come out of Microsoft and Google and all those big cloud providers as well. Communication from an employee empowerment is critical. Many organizations are now facing a communication gap with COVID. You would recommend organizations to hold virtual town halls more often than ever, right? It's easy for employees to feel isolated, especially the one that were not used to work from home. And then, when you think about working from home, make sure that, your home is work ready, right? Many employees can be effective from home because their network connectivity is bad, or their Wi-Fi is terrible, or their kids are sucking up the bandwidth watching Netflix all day long. That's an important factor to keep in mind, right? So empowering your employees is a necessary step for driving an outcome in digital transformation. For customer interaction, if you're in a business that rely on trade show, rely on meeting with customer all day long, you probably were caught off guard, when COVID hit earlier this year. And I think you're seeing now a new model about using virtual reality, augmented reality. Like Charles, I speak at a lot of conferences, and recently I was invited to speak in a conference that was so virtual that you had a virtual exhibit booth. You can meet with people virtually in networking areas, where the company organizing the conference send you a packet to attend a virtual happy hours, with what you had and needed to be virtual. So I think you have to think about how to reinvent this customer interaction. Can you enable, engagement with your customer through chatbots or virtual AI or, virtual agents? And then, look at the opportunity to automate whatever you want. I think if you're a business that was not tuned to have electronic interaction, just think about restaurants now, right? I've not been in a lot of restaurants for the last 6 months, but the few times I've been, they don't give you a menu anymore. There's a barcode on the table, you scan it and you get your menu, right? So restaurants, like many businesses, had to reinvent and think about model where we limit contact, right? And that was a way to do it. That becomes more electronic interaction. And then seek new communication model, right? Of course, email is not the best way to communicate. How can you engage your client using technology to get them to be with you like you are in a store, like you are at a trade show, or having meetings, right? And we've done that with many of our clients, creating virtual roundtables, right? And we used to do those 1 a quarter. We're now doing that once a week, right? Because it's important to keep in touch and be attuned with them. So, the next dimension is reinventing your operation. And I think prior to COVID, many businesses have started a path of automation. In a recent survey from the Wall Street Journal, 60% of employees say they don't want to return to an office, right? So, what has not been automated yet, if you look at your business and say, what have we not automated yet, is likely to be automated in the next 5 years. And I think you have to think about what automation means for your business, right? For many organizations, it's going to have a workforce impact like we've never seen before, right? You know, think about the political challenges that our country and the world is facing. Automation is likely the biggest impact. It's going to have the biggest impact. It is not about offshoring or having things coming from overseas. Automation is going to have a much greater impact that, you know, sending manufacturing overseas had over the last 15 or 20 years. What is not automated yet is likely to start being automated today, will be automated more and more over the next 5 years. You know, remote everywhere is here to stay. You know, people don't want to work from home. And automation is truly the next disruption of work. This is a quote from McKinsey from 2017. It's 3 years old. And they said 3 years ago, coming over the horizon is a new wave of opportunity related to the use of robotics, machine learning, and AI. And that's really, 3 years ago, that term didn't exist, but this is called robotics process automation. And the company that deployed this will see substantial performance gain. And to get back to this drop in productivity, I think we reach a point where we probably can gain more people productivity, but we'll be able to get more technology enhancement of productivity like we've never seen before. You know, 93% of organizations say that automation is a way to kickstart your digital transformation. Automation is a way to start in that path and get you there very, very fast. So again, I know for a lot of people and a lot of people we talk to, business owners, CIOs, CTOs, operation leaders, automation is scary, right? Because, you know, you have to think about not just the tactical things that I said, but what Charles said earlier. You have to align your business strategy. If you're going to automate your work, you know, you have to think about the impact on your workforce, your employee, what you're going to do, right? And how you're going to deal with the impact of automation and what it's going to have to your business moving forward. So to conclude, you know, becoming a digital business, embarking in digital transformation is truly a key to future sustainability. I think COVID has showed us that, you know, this is now an imperative. It was 5 years ago. I think everyone realized now the importance of it. And I think as we emerge from Corona or COVID lockdown and this constant crisis we're in, you know, organization will need to evolve that dating mindset that, you know, being in an office full time is it's not a business imperative, right? We all have to develop new ways of working, some things that we never thought or imagined. I think we're going to find new ways of, you know, work together, you know, digitally like never before in the next year or so. You know, we have to create stronger customer and team member experience, engage with your clients like never before. And I think for many organizations, it becomes an imperative to be a leader in workplace flexibility, right? Flexibility of where you work, how you work, giving access to tools to be sufficient and efficient in today's world. And, you know, I'll leave you with a last word here from the World Economic Forum saying that business that prioritize their return to work strategy, take digital in line of that, and change how they operate will definitely outpace their peers moving forward. So again, we appreciate the opportunity. You know, if there's any question, we certainly have time. Thank you for Lawrence for inviting me and Charles as well. And we've appreciated the opportunity to talk to you guys all today.
Thank you.
Hey, great. Thanks so much. We did get a couple of questions from some people, so let me mention a couple of them. One is, and I'll just throw this one out from Yitz. Daniel, how do you advise your clients who are afraid to fully digitally transform, as in reality, even the best cybersecurity cannot prevent an end user from clicking on a phishing email, even with the best end user training, and expose the company to ransomware? I think this is a theme that people in the digital world are always talking about, saying the biggest point of failure are the employees.
They certainly are. And I think that, you have to view this in a complete package. I think, if you go down to, let's go all digital, uh, you know, and let's look at the risk you're increasing. So in that particular example, can you prevent people to click on a phishing email? Well, there's a lot of AI and machine learning that learn from your email and try to block those links, right? Or transform and block those links. But you know what? If someone click on a phishing email, and you protected your cloud assets the way it should be protected, which by the way, most organizations have not, then it's okay, right? You can deal with those risks because at the end, nothing will get exposed. Someone will try to they'll put their username and password, and it won't go anywhere, right? Nobody will be able to use it for no purpose as well. So I think that, you have to think in a world where security comes first, not last, right? So that's really where digital transformation, fear could be alleviated is take security first. Let's look at security first, then we'll do everything else. So that you're in a position where, a phishing email has no impact on your business.
Yeah, I would add that you need to design in your security strategy to the technology strategy from the beginning. And there are ways to do that. We have some papers on our website that talk about secure by design that show the methodology for that.
Maybe I'll throw out one last question, which is maybe to Charles, because it sounds like you're really on the strategy side of it. How does, and this is a bit of a twist of Ronan's question, how does this all manifest itself? Is it the CEO that makes the strategic decision? Is it a CTO? Where do these organic impetus to change? You gave an example of a company that may have sold filters in the past, and now IoT has enabled people to actually have little sensors that's on the filter to go ahead and facilitate that. Who comes up with that? Is that somebody at the lower level organization that you found, that somebody in the sales group who said, hey, I read something really interesting and we should look into this. Maybe we can sell more filters, or we could perhaps pivot our business, as you said, to not be in the filter selling mode, but installing them and have a service business. Where have you seen, I'll ask it to both of you, Charles and Daniel, where's the point of change coming from? Is it top down? Is it bottom up? Maybe over all of your customers and your clients through the years, you have a macro thesis about how change can initiate in an organization.
Yeah, we actually did some consulting work in one of the big banks on how do you do innovation and how do you manage it. I think the answer is that you don't know where the ideas are coming from. What you need to do as a company is put in place a process to allow ideas to come in and to be evaluated and not to just be discarded. One of the terms that we heard recently was, we talked in the past about sacred cows, the things, the assumptions businesses make that are untouchable, that you just live with it because that's always the way things have been. Well, one thing that COVID has done is slaughter a lot of sacred cows. I mean, people just assume that they couldn't work remotely. We proved that you can. You couldn't learn remotely. We can with limitations, obviously. So the idea is that any idea, whether it's the old-fashioned suggestion box that anybody can just drop something in, but you need an environment where ideas and suggestions are encouraged, are rewarded, and people are given some time to even play with it. We've seen companies that will actually give employees 4 hours a week or 10 hours a week, whatever. If they come up with an idea that, okay, you will change your job responsibilities a little bit, give you a little time every week to play with your idea and prove it and develop it. So, but the other piece that's really important is that we've seen the need from top down at the executive level and beyond of what I would call digital fluency. And it's not just literacy of understanding digital, it's to be able to speak and understand ideas and really understand the new digital world. That you're not going to be able to evaluate these ideas unless you have this kind of digital fluency. And you've got to work hard to make sure that from top to bottom of the organization, the executives, the managers, and the workers all have that degree of fluency and can talk to each other.
This is great. Charles and Daniel, thank you so much for a fascinating discussion. I really appreciate it. If you guys will have your information available to share online, the slide deck, I'm sure people would appreciate that. For everyone's benefit, we almost married this thesis this week and next week's discussion, which is going to be what to do when your business is upended. And Charles and Daniel, you touched upon this for a lot of people, how COVID really threw some people's businesses on their head. And one of the speakers next week, to give an example of what you talked about, I think you talked about convention center as an example. What if your business is really about meeting people? So David Siegel from Meetup is going to be talking again about, okay, my business is about seeing people and now we're not seeing people. Do I no longer have a business? So it's talking about some best practices about how one can pivot their business and not think of it as in a rigid format. So a little bit of a different orientation to the digital discussion today, but also critical in terms of how you sustain your business and grow your business into the future. So thank you everyone so much for being here. I don't know if Aliza, you want to leave any parting comments from the YU Alumni Affair Office?
I just want to thank our speakers, of course, and thank you all for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And please keep an eye out. Our alumni newsletter is coming out later today with lots of other exciting programs and opportunities. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks for the
Thanks so
opportunity.
much, Charles, Daniel, fantastic.
Thanks. Take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.